In other words, trauma. And there is no better person to speak on the way trauma affects addiction than my next guest, Dr. Gabor Mate. Dr. Mate is a world-renowned best-selling author, lecturer, and a specialist on the cutting edge of addiction medicine research with some fascinating and somewhat controversial, but I think quite revelatory ideas about the nexus between trauma, early childhood development, and addiction. With over 20 years of medical practice in family and palliative care, Dr. Mate has decades of firsthand experience working with hardcore drug addicts. I find his insights quite compelling, specifically this idea that the source of addiction is not to be found in the genes, but in fact originates in the early childhood environment. The idea that addiction is complex and that there is no quick fix, and that we should be advocating for a more compassionate, less punitive approach to addicts, addiction, and treatment. I think you're going to really enjoy this perspective. So without further ado, this is me and Dr. Gabor Mate. What's wrong with our kind of conventional wisdom around the idea of addiction and where your kind of philosophy and ideas come in?
Well, traditional wisdom around addiction is either the legalistic one that has it as a bad choice that people make from which they have to be deterred by means of severe punishment. Hence, we got the so-called criminal justice system, which, by the way, I think is a good title. It is a criminal system. The justice system is criminal. the way it treats people.
Well, specifically addicts, sort of further traumatizing the people that are most traumatized.
Well, that's the whole point. Now, the point, though, is that that's the legalistic view, that addiction is a choice and people need to be punished when they engage in addiction-related behaviors. Their very addiction being illegal. Now, the other perspective that seems different is that addiction is a brain disease that you largely inherit, so it's not your fault because you can't help what genes you inherit, but it's a disease of the brain that arises in the brain, partly for genetic, partly for other reasons. And what both of those perspectives share, though, different as they are, what they share is that in neither case are we looking at people's life histories. And we're not looking at social history or the history of a country or a nation. So who are the populations that are most severely affected and what happened to them? And who are the individuals that are most severely affected and what happened to them?